In the beginning scene, a group of police officers surrounds a home and arrests a man with severe facial blisters. The distressed man tries to explain that there is something in the water, but the cops ignore him and take him away in their vehicle. The scene then shifts to the 6 months earlier, when we meet a farming family from Tellico Plains, Tennessee. Zach, the youngest son, is seen collecting cow dung in the yard when his stepbrother Cyrus playfully shoves him onto a dung cart. This leads to a physical altercation between the two, but they are quickly stopped by their strict and religious stepfather, Nathan. Nathan defends Cyrus, his biological son, and hits Zach for fighting. Just then, Zach's sister Alice calls everyone to breakfast. Nathan says a prayer and starts eating at the table, while his wife, Frances, looks at their farmhand, Mike. She appears to have a crush on Mike. A short time later, Charlie Davidson, a real estate agent and the head of the Chamber of Commerce, arrives to purchase the food grown on their farm. He speaks with Frances and attempts to persuade her to sell their farmland, but she dismisses him and sends him away. That night, Frances goes to her children's bedrooms to kiss them goodnight. When she enters Zach's room, she asks about the morning incident. Zach confides in her, frustrated by Nathan's strictness. In response, Frances advises him to respect Nathan because he has accepted them into the family. Later on, Frances pins her hair in front of the mirror before going to bed with her husband, hoping for intimacy. However, Nathan abruptly stops her, claiming that it is a man's responsibility to initiate. The mood is ruined, and they go to bed, leaving Frances depressed and unable to sleep. As a result, she sneaks out and goes to Mike's nearby shack. Mike appears from behind and begins touching her. Frances gets carried away, and the two become intimate. Meanwhile, Nathan awakens to the sound of the windows shuttering and discovers his wife is missing. As the weather worsens, Zach awakens from his sleep. Looking out the window, he notices a large meteorite crashing into their property, emitting an eerie glow. Zach rushes to their neighbor, Dr. Alan Forbes, and informs him of the incident. Nathan also goes outside to investigate and notices his wife walking out of Mike's house, realizing she is cheating on him. However, he chooses not to react and moves toward the meteorite. Upon closer inspection, they discover that it is a large sphere with a tough outer shell. Alan advises caution and suggests waiting for a more accurate examination. The next morning, Charlie pays Alan a visit at his clinic to discuss the mysterious meteorite. When Alan says he wants to notify the Environmental Protection Agency, Charlie tries to dissuade him, fearing that his clients will not buy land there, costing him a lot of money. He encourages Alan to examine the object on his own and decide whether experts should be involved. Following this, Alan, Charlie, and Nathan's families congregate around the meteorite for further examination. Alan hits the meteorite with a hammer, causing a foul-smelling liquid to ooze out. Later in the day, Alan informs Charlie that he has run numerous tests but is unsure of what to look for. Hearing this, Charlie suggests leaving the object alone and avoiding involvement from authorities. Alan's wife, Esther, also manipulates him into remaining silent, fearing that discussing it will reduce the value of their property. At night, the meteorite's hard shell emits light and dissolves into a luminous gel-like substance that seeps into the ground. Zach is taken aback by this and suspects there is a problem. The next morning, Alan discovers that the meteorite has vanished. He then goes to Nathan's house and speculates that the mysterious object was actually a waste tank dropped from an airplane. Everyone laughs at this except Zach, who is certain that the object was not ordinary waste. As the situation calms down, everyone returns to their work. Nathan begins working on his farm, watering the crops and feeding the livestock. One day, Carl Willis, an employee of the Tennessee Valley Authority, arrives in town to assess the land's suitability for a new reservoir. When Charlie learns of his arrival, he approaches him and offers him help with the project. Carl, on the other hand, emphasizes the importance of confidentiality in his work and the possibility of project termination if the TVA detects any interference. Despite this, Charlie is unfazed and offers to drive him around town. Frances, on the other hand, goes to pick vegetables from their garden to cook. To her surprise, the vegetables have grown extremely well and are unusually large in size. She brushes it off, assuming Mike must have simply seeded them. She then chooses some for her meal prep. While cutting open a large cabbage, she discovers that the inside is completely rotten and unfit for consumption. Perplexed, Frances tries to cut the tomatoes, but brown liquid squirts out and splatters on her face. Later, while dining, Zach notices a problem with the food. Furthermore, the well water is cloudy and tastes unpleasant. Alice also notices the change in taste, but their strict father forces them to eat it. That night, Zach sneaks into Alan's house and fills a bottle with clean water for himself and his sister because he refuses to drink the home water. The next morning, Nathan is watering his crops and is overjoyed to see their rapid growth. He thanks God for what he believes to be a bountiful harvest, unaware of the truth. Charlie returns to Nathan's farm in the afternoon and once again attempts to persuade him to sell the property. Nathan, as usual, declines his request and instead highlights the year's plentiful harvest. He even offers Charlie a juicy-looking apple to eat. Charlie takes a bite, but is disgusted by the presence of worms inside. Nathan is shocked when he cuts open a couple more apples, only to discover that they are all rotten. Meanwhile, Alice visits the hen coop to feed the chickens, as she always does, but this time she notices something unusual. The hens are behaving strangely. Regardless, she continues to feed them. Not long after, the hens became aggressive and attacked the young girl. Her screams reach her father and brothers, who rush to her rescue. Nathan carries Alice back home, and Zach notices a cloudy liquid oozing from the dead hens. In the aftermath, Dr. Allen examines Alice and administers medication. During this time, he notices that Frances has lost a lot of weight and appears very ill. She has also developed a large boil on her face, which has changed her facial appearance. Allen, concerned, suggests she visit his clinic, but she remains silent out of fear of her strict husband. Later that evening, the entire family is sitting in the living room when Frances begins acting strangely. Shortly thereafter, the family notices her sewing her own hand to her socks, resulting in bleeding. Zach and Nathan try to stop her, but she violently pushes them away. Cyrus and Nathan eventually manage to drag her into a room. Zach rushes to Alan's house, concerned about his mother's deteriorating condition, to seek help. Alan grabs his medical kit and rushes to their house, sensing an emergency. However, Nathan and Cyrus act as if nothing has happened and ask the doctor to leave. Nathan slaps the boy after he leaves, chastising him for interfering with strangers' private affairs. While walking back home, Alan notices an unusual sight, steam rising from Nathan's well. Sensing something is wrong, he collects a bottle of water as a sample to be analyzed at a nearby laboratory. The following day, Carl is seen surveying the surrounding area for the proposed water reservoir. During this, he becomes thirsty and goes to Nathan's farmhouse for a glass of water. He knocks on the door, only to discover it open. Carl slowly enters the kitchen and helps himself to water from the kitchen faucet, but he is suddenly attacked and nearly killed by a mentally unstable Frances. Fortunately, Nathan intervenes just in time and sends his wife to the room. He then inquires as to Carl's purpose in this location, but the latter is so terrified that he forgets his thirst and flees. Frances's health deteriorates over time, and the blisters on her face grow larger. She speaks incoherently and eats in an unsettling way. Nonetheless, Nathan ignores it all, believing it is God's punishment for her infidelity. Nathan and Cyrus appear to have become infected by the poisoned food and water, with scars appearing on their faces. In contrast, Zach is able to protect himself and Alice from the infection by consuming clean water and food from Alan's house. Nathan sits beside his wife, who is tied to the bed, and reads her a few Bible verses. He eventually falls asleep, allowing Frances to break free from her restraints. Meanwhile, Zach awakens with strange. He hears some noises and goes downstairs to investigate. There, he is confronted by his mother, whose face has transformed into a pus-covered mask with disheveled hair. She has grown so violent that she begins attacking her son with a fire poker. The commotion awakens Nathan, who drags and locks her in an underground bunker. Alice witnesses all of this from the stairs, and it makes her cry. The next day, Alan goes to the lab to get the test results for the water sample. The lab assistant informs him that the water contains an unknown element that affects its metabolic properties and molecular structure. Realizing the danger, Alan rushes to contact Carl for help but is unable to reach him. Meanwhile, Charlie arrives at Alan's house and requests Esther's assistance in convincing Nathan to sell their property. Esther agrees, and the two travel to Nathan's farmhouse. They stopped by aggressive dogs. Scared, Esther flees, but the dogs catch her and maul her to death. Charlie, on the other hand, enters the bunker unprepared for the horrors that await him. He is quickly attacked by a terrifying-looking Frances who kills him and devours his flesh. In the evening, Zach returns home with some nutritious food and clean water for his sister. After feeding her, he decides to go check on his mother, but before he can do that, he is confronted by his stepfather, who has succumbed to the infection. As a result, he begins attacking Zach, but he manages to escape. At the same time, Alice notices a noise outside her room. She opens the door but is startled by Cyrus, who has also lost his sanity. He charges at the young girl, but just as he is about to harm her, Zach comes in with a bat and subdues his half-brother. After that, he hides Alice in a closet and promises to return with help. Alan arrives at the scene looking for the children, but Nathan appears from behind and strikes him with a hammer, killing him instantly. Nathan then cornered Zach one last time and was about to kill him when Carl came to his rescue and stabbed Nathan with a pitchfork. In the midst of the chaos, smoke rises from the basement and the house begins to crumble. Zach and Carl rush upstairs to retrieve Alice, but are met by an awakened Cyrus. In an act of self-defense, Zach pushes Cyrus off the stairs, appearing to knock him out. Carl rushes Alice to his car, while Zach searches for his mother. To his despair, he discovers his mother's body dissolving into liquid. Zach is heartbroken and prepares to flee the collapsing house, but Nathan confronts him again. The boy dodges his attacks and drives the pitchfork deeper into Nathan's body before exiting. Carl returns to save Zach, and the trio drives away just before the house collapses. Several months later, Carl is hospitalized after drinking a small amount of the farm's water. The man from the opening scene is revealed to be Carl, who had a nervous breakdown due to the infectious water before being admitted to the hospital. The authorities and the media assure the public that the well containing the poisonous water has been destroyed and that there is no longer a risk to the public. In the final scene, the ground and trees surrounding the farmhouse begin to crumble and disintegrate, revealing more of the luminous liquid spreading across the surface. Subscribe for more videos like this, enable notifications, and leave a like to support the channel. Thank you for watching.